Hi, Scott and Mindy again. You've met our family. We really appreciate how supportive everyone has been, and we just wanted to let you guys get to know us a little bit better. Maybe some of our adoption story, our journey along the way. It actually started 16 years ago in 2000. Mindy and I went to mission school in Tennessee, and on that first outreach that we did, we spent 2 months in Africa, and 2 weeks of that time was at an orphanage in Ethiopia, and we just fell in love with it. Even though we weren't in love yet, it was just still a starting point. We were there together, and God was already bringing our family together at that point before we even knew that we were going to be a family. We sat and played with children and fell in love with them, and I think we both knew from that point that that was something that we had to do with our lives. So it was just after that that God brought us together. But it was another 7 years before we returned to Ethiopia and adopted our first child, Jubilee, who was just a few miles away from where we spent that time in Ethiopia 8 years before. While we did that adoption, we were actually living in China as missionaries, which is ironic thinking about where we are now with the story that God is continuing to do, bringing that adoption and China all together. And you can tell a little bit about what he's been doing in that area.
Well, Gia Wong's whole story, like how this came about, was interesting because he had mentioned missions. We lived overseas for 7 years, and then we came back to America last year. And we really wanted to be involved in orphan care still, but I didn't think we would qualify. So I heard about hosting, which is a really big deal. They take unadoptable kids, put them in families for about 2 weeks, and then the adoption rate kind of shoots through the roof because they aren't names and numbers anymore. They become real kids with real stories. So I called. He was at work, and I was like, we want to host a kid. Will we qualify to host a kid? Because I didn't think we would qualify to adopt, and they said that we would. Well, long story short, we ended up with 2 boys over Christmas. We prayed and presented their information to everybody, and somebody stepped forward to adopt one of them. But Gia Wong, who was the smaller, more difficult of the 2, had a harder story, was abandoned at age 7 in a train station. We couldn't find anybody to adopt him. So we sent him back to China because it's just a short host program. We fasted and prayed about it for about 21 days and just felt like we should just pursue this and move forward. And if it's no, it's no. If it's yes, it's yes. And lo and behold, we actually don't qualify to adopt him just as we thought, but China said yes. They went ahead and gave us a waiver to adopt him. And we have learned a lot of stuff this year through this process. What have you learned?
Well, I used to look at it as how God was moving things to put us in a place to adopt, but I've really seen in the case of Gia Wong, having been able to host him ahead of time and waiting for this process to unfold while we already know him, is that we are really just one of those pieces he's moving, and the story is Gia Wong's. God saw a child abandoned at a train station in China, and he started moving those pieces at that time, and we are one of those pieces that God has moved into his life and is making us a family that way.
I've learned a lot too. Number one, it's just been a miraculous year. We don't have the money to do this adoption. Just because we qualified doesn't change the fact that we still don't have the money. And God's just totally poured it in. We've had other missionaries, former missionaries, just give us big checks for this. I mean, the amount of money that we have now is because people have just blessed us. It's been incredible. And then secondly, it's really just kind of hit home this concept that God isn't looking for perfect people. We are not perfect parents. We are not an amazing family. Our house is kind of small, but God has bypassed all of that stuff and has said, if you say yes, then I'm gonna do this. He's just looking for willing people. And that is something that we want to stand before God with a willing heart, and he has just honored that with this adoption, and you guys are a part of that. So we just want to thank you guys, and hopefully you feel like you know us a little bit more through this video. And we love you guys, even though we haven't met you. Anybody that is for adoption, we love you guys. So just thank you for listening to our story.
Yes, thank you.